Welcome to the Marvy Woods Football Academy podcast. In this season, I'm going to be speaking to academy managers from the Premier League, Championship, League One, League Two, and some Scottish clubs. As an academy parent myself, I want to bring some insight into how these academies are being run. I find that it's easy to approach coaches. I hear from players, ex-players, and parents on many platforms about their experiences in academies. But I do not hear from academy managers. This is why I want to do this season. If you think first team managers have playing staff of 18 to 25, whereas academy managers have a playing staff of over 100. That could be from the under 9s to the under 18s. These are people who are so powerful, but they just seem like these men in grey suits or women in grey suits that you just never get to hear from. So what I want to do is I want to bring to you, the listener, what they think, what they want to sign, and what they are looking for in these academies. So if you like this episode, don't just watch and keep it to yourself. Subscribe to see more and spread the word. Welcome to the Marvy Woods Football Academy podcast. On today's episode, I have Mr. Perry Northeast from Brighton Hove Albion. He's the women's academy manager, and I'm really grateful he's come on because I want to know about that side of football. So thank you for joining me on this episode, Perry.
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah, thanks for reaching out. Yeah, I was, of course, really wanted to do this as soon as you touched base. So yeah, looking forward to having a good chat.
I'm glad to have you on board. So what I normally do is I normally go from the beginning and work our way to where we are today. So firstly, did you ever or have you ever played for a professional academy before?
So yeah, so when I was younger, growing up, I've always been from the South Coast. So, and I say younger, it's like over 20 years ago now. I was like in and out of Portsmouth Academy. I was never quite a mainstay. Younger players, sometimes you get trial opportunities. I'll stay a bit longer, play a few training games, those kind of things. And then, yeah, it was when I was like 16, when I like knew that the academy route way wasn't going to be for me, which was fine at the time, but it still gave me an opportunity, I guess, to understand the landscape, even though I was young then. And I was one of these typical late developers, but when I'm younger, you don't see it like that. You just see it as, oh, I'm really small and I'm trying to compete with all these big kids. So I was like in and out, but didn't really become a mainstay within the program there. But it still gave me a good idea of the academy concept and the landscape.
What age did you start
Playing?
or was you scouted?
Yeah, so I started playing fairly late in terms of what you see these days, because I know a lot of players start playing at like 5, 6, 7. But if I look back now, probably not till I was like 9 or 10, always feeling like I was catching up. And the grand scheme of things started a bit later in comparison to like you see now, like pre-academies and things like that. So yeah, started a bit later.
Was it a school of excellence?
Yeah, so back then it would have been Centre of Excellences. Yeah.
I'm exposing your age on him.
No, definitely not the EPPP for sure. It was in those times where I think the whole landscape in this country had a revamp and the EPPP was being introduced. And again, now I'm on this side of the coin as such, and I understand the academy landscape. It's interesting. But when I look back in terms of some of the support structures, they were there. You still had caring staff, you still had great level coaching, but comparison to what the players receive these days is crazy. And that's all being brought in by this EPPP kind of criteria set that the boys game has.
What position did you play?
I was a centre midfielder. It was interesting because it was also at a time that was a little bit before when the England DNA come in and how we're trying to play now. It's really interesting because I look back and reflect and really feel like, I'm like, okay, I understand why I found it difficult to compete, because I was quite small. I just like to have the ball. I just love to play. But when the ball's in the air or it's going over your head or you have to compete physically, it was almost like they're some of the bigger mainstays of how you're going to grow and develop in the environment, or actually just stay in the environment. Can you physically compete? So I was a centre midfielder, but looking back now, and I always think, God, I know why I struggled, because just remembering just everyone else just felt bigger than me at that time.
Who used to take you to the games?
I had a fairly good support network. My mum would take me to games, but probably more to the point, I've got an older brother. So he played non-league and things as well. But I think he, in the back of his head, always knew that I probably wasn't going to quite make it professionally. So he was really good at making sure that I understand that I still had a level of education behind me, that if you turn 16 and it's not going to happen, then that's not the be all and end all. And that was fine. So he was quite a big influence in that stage to ensure that I've got a couple of pathways I can go down.
Did you ever get those, I call it car conversations, where you have like, what was that? What was that performance? What did you do out there? Like, did you ever have any of those in your time coming up?
Yeah, a little bit. I think my family were quite chilled, to be honest. So I definitely was never really grilled in the car too much. It's really interesting because it's just, I'm now, again, I say being on the flip side of things and having to just speak to parents and carers around when is the right time to talk. And I just remember I just never really had any of those really hard conversations in the car. I don't think, but then also it's really hard to remember that, but I certainly don't remember being grilled.
So how did you take getting released?
I think because I was always on the cusp. I was I was more of a training player, right? I never quite probably had the feeling of being completely released, because whilst I was going and play training games, trial games, things like that, at the same time, I was still playing for my grassroots side. I think on reflection, it takes time for players, I feel, to adapt from their grassroots setting or their team where they've come from, where they probably feel maybe like one of the better players, one of the higher performers. They feel socially connected with their group. And I never probably quite got to that stage when I was going and trialing in places and things like that. And that's something that I've talked quite passionately about to our parents and carers here, where we'll have a new player inducted into the club. And the first couple of months, the parents are saying, she's not quite playing how she plays. I'm like, don't worry, don't panic. And I guess that just comes from my own experiences as well.
So how did you transition into the whole coaching setting from there? You said you got released at 16, and when did you catch the coaching bug?
I still felt that even if I wasn't potentially quite good enough at the time, and I'm happy to accept that, I still wanted to, I guess, feel what it's like to be a professional athlete in something. So what was quite nice, and I was really fortunate with this, is again, my brother being a really good influence. At the time, I think I was 19, 20. And you may have heard of it, may not, but I went to a trial with England beach soccer. And I always say to this day, it was probably the trial, my very first trial was probably the best training session I ever had for the national team. Everything just seemed to work. And I was like, oh, this is good. So I was able to then break into the national side for England. And that gave me the second opportunity to understand what it's like to be a professional athlete and travel and go to high level tournaments and play against players in other settings from other nations and other cultures that are essentially full-time professionals in what they do. So that gave me the opportunity to understand a professional landscape, but just in a different context.
That's interesting to me. Beach soccer. Where was you practicing? 'Cause when you think about Brazil, you think like, okay, yeah, they've got all the beaches. Where was you guys training?
So we had a few venues. There's actually one training venue we used to go to in Leighton in London. So that was quite far from me, or Bournemouth, Camford Cliffs, Brighton had a venue as well. So there's various centres and venues, but yeah, but it was good. There was a good few years, gave me that opportunity to understand professional settings, professional landscapes, and you're playing against nations like Brazil where you're not touching the ball, trust me. You think you're playing against Brazil, you're not. You're just on the pitch with them. That was nice. And then alongside that commitment, I was just able to then obtain my coaching badges and just work through the system in that way.
Okay. So is Brighton your first academy job?
Previous to Brighton, I was at Portsmouth Women's Football Club. So again, they're connected to the main club, and I'd never really looked back from just completing one session for them at the time. So I was still playing and not ready to really finish playing, but I knew some of the players there and they required a coach. And it's one of those typical, okay, I'll come in and do a session. Then one becomes two becomes every week it was a really funny story, because then every week became the first team manager stepped down and said, well, before we make this public, would you like to become the new head coach? Oh, and try and look after our youth section as well. And that will happen
Yeah.
within 6 months. And I'm like, that's a bit crazy, but you can't turn that kind of opportunity down.
Yeah.
But it was great. And then I guess if you like, Brighton have now become a second club after some time in coach development and things like that.
Brilliant. So do you guys have a category for the academy?
Yeah, so in the girls' academy landscape, you have what you call the professional academy system, so the PGA, similar in some senses to your EPPP. And what you'd have is category 1 and category 2 football clubs. And again, that's very similar to like Cat 1 and Cat 2 in the boys' systems, and they're based a little bit around on the financial input that you can put into the program as well as the level of funding you receive. And then there's obviously a bit of a higher expectation on what you deliver according to the category that you're based within. So that program is currently with we call it our under 19s and our under 16s, but then we have a full pathway that sits underneath that as well.
What age group did the girls start?
So we start at under 12. So we
11 to 12,
yeah,
you said?
so almost made a bit of a purposeful decision because we have underneath our under 12s, we have what we call our emerging talent centres. So that's under 9s to under 12s. And we used to operate where our first team was at under 10s, but there's a couple of reasons why we almost delayed. We just felt to ourselves, actually, for children to understand what it feels like to be in an academy system, it fits for us quite nicely that they start in an academy system at the same time as they might start secondary school. So it's like that next level of being a child. But the secondarily to that, we really like the fact that a lot of girls can maybe play in mixed environments, really good level, mixed grassroots teams. So we almost want them to go and be a hero, be a champion, be brilliant in that environment, and let us nurture you and help you and challenge you at a slightly later age.
So is there a audit system that happens as well?
Yes, so we have the PJAC audit system, which again it's been brought in recently over the last couple of seasons by the Football Association. So that holds us to a set of criteria, which I think is good. I think it's really good. I think it's needed because obviously it is challenging because when the auditors come in and they meet you and they see you, yes, you are challenged and you're really asked to demonstrate what you can do and to a good level. So, but we don't mind it. We think it's good for us because it also ensures that if we're missing any spots, that we can then try and improve our practice and hopefully everybody sees it that way, so we can just keep developing and growing the game and the standards.
How many days a week do the girls train and play? From the younger to the older
Yeah,
ones?
so our 12s are only in twice a week at the moment and they play fixtures on weekends. Then we start to then increase the contact points thereafter. So up to say 3 evenings a week for the slightly older groups. And then our under 19s that feed the first team, they're almost a full-time model, but we call it a bit more of a hybrid model because they're still in education as well and they don't all complete their education here. So they're on a bit of a hybrid program, but it's as close to being full-time as possible, I think, bearing in mind that we still have a responsibility to ensure that their academic progress is fitting alongside their football achievements.
So when you have a games program, is that by the Premier League as well, or how does that
No,
work?
so the games program underneath the under 16s, in fact, even lower than the 16s, but the games program it's almost governed by yourself. So it's what the FA might call club owned. So our under 12s and our under 13s play in local mixed football or boys football leagues, same age. So we feel that's a really nice challenge, great challenge for them, not too much traveling. And it's a good level for them and they're able to compete well in those competitions. Then as you go through the ages, so our 14s, 15s, 16s, they actually all compete in the JPL, the boys leagues. And then our under 19s, they compete in the Professional Game Academy League. So that's an under 21s league and that's all of the academies across the country will compete in that. But underneath that at the moment, there's almost a bit of an expectation that we play our primary games program against boys teams. And then we still have academy versus academy competitions that are placed on for us throughout the year.
So when you get to the first team, is it like a full-time situation?
Yeah, the first team are fully professional. They're obviously competing in the Women's Super League. That's becoming harder and harder every year. And we've got a really nice coaching setup there with the senior team. And Dario's brought in some really nice, good ideas aligned to the club philosophy. And we finished 5th last season. So that's our highest finish in the Super League today. So it's great. On one hand, it's really, really good. But it also means that we have to ensure that the academy is keeping up with the levels that the first team are operating at. So it's a really nice challenge for us, which, yeah, we like.
What's your take on quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4 signings? Is that something you take note on at Brighton?
Yeah, it's really interesting because you could have a conversation with this for a long time, because I think, yes, we do. We always look at that, and we do have a nice balance between your quarter ones to your quarter fours. But at the same point, that's obviously their chronological age, but we have to look at
Mm.
measuring their growth, their maturation, because you could be a quarter four, but be 7 centimeters taller than your teammate who's a quarter one. So we do take the quarters into account, but we also think you have to take into account actual growth and actual maturation, because you can sometimes, the younger ages, I think you can really tell the difference from quarter ones and fours, but especially when you get to maturation and growth and puberty and things like that at the teenage years, yes, you can take the quarter ones to fours into account, but you could be a quarter one and still be a late developer. So I think
Okay.
you have to take both within equal measure.
Do you feel that England women helped the women's game?
Think England's success. I think there's two parts to this. England's success has certainly meant the growth of the game is accelerated. So,
Mhm.
first of all, the fact that England are performing, they're doing well. English players are very revered across the world. That's really helped the game, and it's helped hopefully clubs invest and think, yeah, this is a great project. Secondarily to that, the Women's Super League, since the last World Cup, has really had a boom period as well. So not only are the English players flourishing, but you do have the best players in the world wanting to come and play in the Women's Super League now. So I'm not saying that hasn't happened previously, but for me, having been in the game for a number of years, the past 3 to 4 years, I'm really seeing the Super League almost follow in the footsteps of the Premier League, where the Premier League almost, it was probably in those early 2000s where it really took over as the league where the best in the world wanted to come. And it feels like the Women's Super League is following that trend, and it has followed it over the past 2 to 3 years with the level of signings that clubs are making now.
So do you find it a lot easier to recruit at academy level because of this?
We've done a really big body of work where we are in terms of wanting to recruit young players that are of a very good level. Naturally, based where we are in Brighton, half of our recruitment area is in the sea. So we have to stretch out places that are north to us, west to us, east to us. And we really want to try and become an academy that also has a very wide and different demographic and player pool. So yeah, we work really hard on recruiting the right level of talent, the right players for us, but also ensuring that we don't take away their individual brilliance. So we're not an academy that say, okay, you're very good, but now you're going to play the Brighton way. You're going to play the Brighton way, but with your own individual style, brilliance, and what got you here in the first place. So that's what we really try to do with the young players.
Do you think sleep is important to performance?
Yeah, definitely.
And why is that?
It is, but I think it's really difficult for the girls because they are training a lot in the evenings at the moment. They're then waking up at 7 a.m. to maybe go to school the next day. And that's a really repetitive process. And it's really important. And actually, it's funny you mentioned this because what we want to try and do is obviously the weekend, like a Saturday or a Sunday, the game day where you want to maybe feel like you're freshest. And in a professional setting, of course, it's not too difficult because we can really manipulate when people train and when they're with us and when they're not and when they should be getting their rest. But within a talent development system or the girls' academy system, we want to ensure they're getting appropriate training but appropriate rest. So on this weekend, they feel like they can perform. But it's just really difficult because it might also for them feel like it's the end of the week. I've had a really hard training week. Oh, and by the way, I've been in school for 5 days. So by the time they might get to a Friday evening and they're not training, they could just be really tired. So it is important. And our medical team, our performance team, they do a lot of work with the players around sleep and nutrition and just and good habits essentially.
So what is the importance of nutrition to football?
Yeah. So that's a good question. It's such a broad question, isn't it? At the highest level, again, it could be the 1%ers, it could be the difference in terms of what supplementation you might be taking. But again, just relating it back to an academy environment, what's more important than supplementation and things like that is just your day-to-day habits in terms of the basic nutritional needs that you require as a young player. So before advocating anything in terms of supplementation and things like that, we will first of all applicate just a good diet. And if you can have that good baseline as a young individual, that's where later down the line we can really help you and support you with any potentially nutritional needs that you might have as well. So yeah, it's really important. And one of the main reasons why it's important, why we really say this to the children, is because if you're looking after your nutrition, particularly in the winter months, you're not going to miss training as much. We try and caveat it to say, look, if you want to eat well, then we won't be getting a phone call from your parents to say, I'm really sorry, but so-and-so is ill this week. So yeah, it's really important, really important.
What does youth development mean to you?
Yeah. For us here, it's really about making it special. It's really about ensuring that the players have an identity with us and they have a dream, a vision and where they want to be, but it isn't the defining of their character. So it isn't who they are. It's not just I'm Nancy and I'm a footballer. It's I'm Nancy and I do this and I do that and I do that and I play for Brighton as well. So for us, youth development is so important in terms of their holistic experience that they receive when they're with us. So we want them to be the very best footballers they can be. We want them to reach their potential, reach their max, just give everything, and they will. But then also when they graduate from us, at whatever age they graduate, whether that's 16, 17, 18, 19, we want them to come out and just be really, really good people and mature, confident, and just willing to then go and have a professional career in anything, not just football.
So, in saying that, what's important to you, results or development?
Performance, I think there's the debate, isn't there? Like winning versus development versus winning. But really for us, I think performance is the word. So even all the way up to our under 19s team, I'm never going to have our coaches not wanting to win a game, but really the performance is what's important. So that's where I think you can hit that real sweet spot. And you're not even thinking about winning. If you're just thinking about performing, the winning might take care in itself. So you're developing, but you're also winning. So I wouldn't say it's winning versus development. I think it's a really good question, but for us, it's all about performance. And that doesn't just mean perform on the football pitch and win a game of football. Perform means when you're walking into the gym and you're about to work with our performance and our conditioning team, do everything you can to 100%. And that's performing.
Mhm.
You're not winning, you're not developing, you're just performing. So if you're going into an analysis workshop with your team, just try to ensure that you've got full focus and you're engaging with the group and you're asking and answering questions. And if you're doing that, you're performing, and everything else can then hopefully just take care of itself. But if you're not doing those things on and off the pitch, you're not performing. So you're not developing, which means you're not going to win. So we talk about performing a lot, and yes, you can have your down days and your off days and things like that. But as long as you're trying to perform and you're trying to get better, everything else will take care of itself.
So, if I'm a girl trying to join Brighton, where are you doing your scouting?
Yeah. So I mentioned obviously earlier, we have our emerging talent centres. So we have one locally
Hmm.
to us. We also have one in Whiteleaf,
Hmm.
which is still close enough to the training centre. The scouting network in the girls' game probably still isn't quite as big as you would say in the boys' game. But we are quite fortunate here in the sense that Ian Buckman, who's the equivalent to me on the boys' side, and his recruitment group, we have a really good group of staff here who just help and support each other. So even though somebody might be working for the boys recruitment department, naturally he might go to a game or she might go to a game. And if it's a mixed game and there's a talented female player, we're really grateful that those staff members will also report into us and say, oh, we saw this person. So we're really fortunate in the sense that our scouting network isn't vast, but it is well supported. It's well connected with support from the boys' academy as well.
Do you do loans higher up as you go higher up?
Yeah, so it's interesting because the loans element of our pathways, and with a lot of women and girls pathways, is something that's been growing for probably the past 3 or 4 years. So that's probably in fact, that's definitely another trend that we're starting to see in the game, is the gap between being an academy player to a first team player in our environment can sometimes be bigger than it. Well, it's getting bigger and bigger. Like,
Yeah.
again, you've probably spoken to other people who've said the same thing. And so the loan strategy is something that can be really important for us. It's the right opportunity for the right player at the right time. So it's not just a loan because we've got to really try and make sure we understand why we might be placing a player in a certain place in a certain location. So we are doing it. I can see again that becoming a bigger part of the program as well. Really offering players that senior exposure that is very different to, or can be very different to, academy football.
Have you seen any of those loans not work out to the way that you would like? And what do you think some of those circumstances are based on?
Yeah, I think it's not so much about the loans not working. It's just about sometimes there's a embedding process for the players. So what I mean about this in
Yeah.
terms of working with a senior team for the first time, we do try to, we do educate the players on this, but quite often it might be the first time for some of them that they're really having to compete for playing minutes. And you do that, you manufacture that within academy settings, but within senior settings, that's one thing that certainly I think a lot of young players, they try to adapt to as quickly as they can. So I wouldn't ever say you don't get successful loans, but you maybe just get ones where you could be having a really nice catch up and a one-to-one with that player, and they're like, yeah, I wasn't sure it's going to be like this hard to try and get myself into the team or stay in the team or get the minutes. But what's quite nice on the reverse of that is, on the flip side, what you start to see is after 2 to 3 to 4 months, the playing minutes become higher, their experience becomes greater, and you see them come out of the other side in terms of the minutes. But that's probably the one thing that probably a common trend across young players going into clubs. It's the first time that they're really having to really compete for minutes and game time and playing time.
Do you need resilience to be a professional?
Yes, yes. It's really hard. One of the biggest things that, particularly in the professional game, or even for our under 19s who sit just off it, you can sometimes be doing so well, training hard, competing well for week after week, but you still might not feel it's fair because you still might not play that 90 minutes or the 70 minutes at the end of a game week. That can be really hard. It can be really hard for athletes and players.
And how do you see girls coping with that?
I think it's our duty. We have a duty of care at a younger age to ensure that we prepare them as best possible as we can. We have our under 19s head coach, Danny Bowman. She's an ex-player. She's our ex-club captain. So they've got such a good role model as such, who's been through the process, who understands it. That team and that program is a really good interceptor before first team football, because she's able,
Mhm.
alongside her coaching team and the rest of the academy, to put some interventions in place to ensure that the young players are as prepared as possible going into that senior setting. So, yeah, so I think we're fortunate again to have some key staff across the pathway that have lived it. They have the absolute lived experience for the girls, so they can really give them the arm around the shoulder when they need it, but also the hard lessons when they need it.
Do you see the standards rising in the game right now?
Massively, massively. There's technical baseline of your average player is now getting much higher. The physical output and the physical conditioning of the players is higher. Those two things are both massive. And actually what we're seeing, what I love, is the entry level of the pathway. So when we're having some of our under 12s or under 11s players come in, the baseline of their ability these days is just brilliant to watch. So, and that's really accelerated. So it's great for us because it just means that we can also then accelerate their development as soon as they come into us. So yeah, it's getting better and better certainly every year.
If you're looking for a player who's just basically coming on trial, what do you think is the difference between a player you take on at Brighton compared to a player at grassroots?
Yeah. Again, just in I guess relation to the previous question, And being really honest, 5-6 years ago within the game, you would probably recruit a player if, let's say they're an athlete, but their technical ability is not great, or vice versa. The game has now got to a stage where you almost have to be a bit of everything, but we certainly like technical proficiencies, have a real baseline of technical detail and understanding and those types of traits. We're quite vocal in saying like size is irrelevant. So in fact, I wouldn't say we favor later developers, but we really have an understanding of that area of the game as well. So it doesn't matter if you're not quite the same height as somebody else. If we can see there's good potential for change or potential for progression, you'll be recruited as well. So yeah, those are two big things for us. And it's quite funny because you'll quite typically see, and when we're playing against other girls' academy teams, we're quite often smaller, or our central midfields are, we have some tiny players, but they can move the ball and they shift it. And it's just a joy to watch them. And we just know that their growth and that the maturation that will come at a later stage. So yeah, they're some of the proficiencies that we really try and require.
What is that patience like as a coach? Like knowing like you can see something, but it's not quite hit it yet.
Yeah, we've done some really good work around it here where we all have this natural patience for it. You can never quite still predict what's going to happen in 3 years' time. But yeah, it's more for them. You just have to ensure that you say to them, look, you've got time, it's good. I think if we seem to be not even really talking about it too much with the players and with the parents, things like that, I also feel that there's still some of your better players regardless of the size. So again, like I say, there's technical traits and skill sets and abilities with their mind in terms of staying ahead of the game that we don't see it as a huge problem. Often feel as well that if you're a slightly smaller player, to stay within a high level of football, you have to think ahead of the game. So it's quite simple. For young players that are smaller, if they don't check their shoulders, they know that there's maybe a big hit coming, right? So I would almost say they sometimes have an advantage because they know that the contact's coming, and probably when they're younger, they're probably checking their shoulders out of fear. But then actually that's really helping them. So yeah, patience is key. But but it also doesn't mean we just only have a bias towards smaller players, because there's still, again, like I said earlier, it has to be a level of proficiency that matches the requirements of the academy.
Do you do academy tours?
We do, and they're growing as well.
What's the benefits?
One of the biggest ones for us is having them with us for a period of time where you can really see everything you've spoken about today, like nutritional habits, sleep, social settings, everything like that. You get to see everything about every player, and it's really good. So for us, selfishly, we can see who's almost really and well equipped to go to that next level. But for them, it's really important, because if I talk about our professional development phase, what we wouldn't like is any of our 16 or 17-year-olds to be selected to go with the first team for a fixture potentially. Let's say they've got a fixture away versus Liverpool or Manchester City and it's an overnight. Or if any of the academy players are privileged to be asked to go on a pre-season training camp, we don't want their first overnight or abroad exposure to be in a senior setting where they're probably already going to be a little bit worried and a little bit fearful. So that's why they're important, because it feels that if you're ever going to be, well, one, for their holistic development, and it's just great for us to see them to see us, and make sure we're developing them as people. But like I say, it's really important that they've gone away for a period of time. So if they do ever get asked to go into that senior team, the only thing that really changes for them is the level. But everything else is fine, like having to get up in the morning, breakfast, lunch, dinner, train, team meetings, that should be consistent. But the difference would be is just the level. But if that's all they have to think about, that's fine.
How do you deal with lateness at Brighton? So a player is coming in consistently late. Do you ever have that?
The parents and carers do so much for them. So first of all, before our staff can really go into the player and say, look, what's going on, we have a duty of care to understand the situation and understand if there's any difficulties for the family. And if there is, and it's definitely not on the player, then we'll really try and help in any way we can with that family. So I think before we investigate with the player, it's really important to go for the parents and carers first, just to understand any potential situations and settings and if we can help. But then If it's the parent say, well, no, I'm dropping her off at the right time, but she's just taking 10 minutes to get to your gym session or pitch session, then yes, of course, there needs to be a conversation piece around that as well. And again, the older they get, the more we make sure that we're trying to create these autonomous athletes. So our professional development phase with the under-19s, what's really interesting for both the players and the parents and carers is a lot more of the communication is now direct with the player. So whether that's team selection, whether that's an IDP conversation, whether that's you have to be here at this time, it's really interesting because the players and the parents and the carers have this like, oh, it's suddenly all going through you. And of course, we still go through the parents and carers for anything sensitive, but the day-to-day communication through Danny and her coaching team and the staff is with the player. So that's how we try to ensure that they have good habits and punctuation.
So why is timekeeping important?
Not to frustrate the staff for a start, but then we hold staff to this as well. So again, it's just about habits, isn't it? And there's also respect and politeness. So if we're due to start a session at a certain time, then it should start at that time. But we often say here as well that, of course, we're going to hold the players to this level of accountability, but we also have to hold ourselves as staff to that. So if the pitch-based session of a day or of an evening is 3 till 4:30 and the gym is due to start at 4:45 to 5:45, then we have to give the players half a chance. So we can't just delay the pitch session. We can't just, we're going to do another 15 minutes because we can't do that because that's not fair on the players. So we also have to have a level of punctuation and responsibility. So then the players, we can role model that for the players. So yeah, it is important.
Do you work with schools in terms of when you have like a player sign? Do you like look at school reports and stuff? How does that work for you guys?
Yeah, we're big on that. We're really big. One of our recent appointments or recent recruits, we've recruited a educational lead for the academy program, solely responsible for looking after the players' educational welfare. And he's really good at also balancing everybody out here. Everybody wants the players for more, right? So they're like, right, let's get them here, let's get them here. But he's really good at communicating with the schools. Have they got high attendance report? Are they looking likely to attain their grades or their predicted grades? Is everything at school going okay for them? So are they essentially showing similar behavior sets, or are they showing a really nice behavior set because they're with us, but there's a completely different personality to schools?
Why is that important?
We talk about being fortunate and privileged quite a lot. And it's really true. The girls are talented first and foremost. So they deserve this setting because they're talented and they obviously have a mindset that allows them to be here. But we just want to ensure that they're not taking that too far when they're in a school settings, walking around in a Brighton tracksuit, or the bits that you want people to feel really proud, but you want them also to be grounded. For us, understanding if they have a similar personality in both settings is quite important. But equally, if they're not enjoying school for whatever reason, we feel by being a connecting piece between schools, player, parents, carers, and us, hopefully we can help that. So we can, again, help them attain grades, help them understand that their academic setting is really important.
What are you like when it comes to the period of release and retain? Or do you have release and retain?
We do. We've done a piece of work, and as subtle as it is or not, we call it rerouting. So reroute and retain, non-retention and retention. And we like to think of the players as graduates. So you're graduating from the program because you've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years of excellent training, excellent development. You've really helped us as well because you've been great. So we try and change. First of all, we try and change the narrative in terms of what it's about. But that's not to say it never gets easier because you're working almost daily with these excellent young human beings that give you so much and so much energy, so much joy, so much performance. So it never gets easier. We just always try to hope that we're doing things in a respectful and transparent manner and in a timely enough manner that we can really help players with their next steps as well.
You mentioned parents earlier. So you bring girl in, girl is adjusting to the system, or you have a player there who started as a centre back. The coach sees them as a left winger or a right winger now all of a sudden, or a striker, they want them to drop back. How do you deal with a parent who's like, my girl does not play at that position, right? My girl is a winger. My girl is not a striker. Like, how do you deal with those kind of situations?
Yeah.
Or do you deal with those kind of situations?
Yeah. First of all, I think it comes about education. So it comes about onboarding and being really fair, really honest, really transparent straight away. That's really important. But secondarily, and we say this to the staff a lot, I think is about getting the parents on board and bringing them on the journey early as well. So we're not necessarily an academy that would like to keep everything distant, or we see it as, no, we'll talk to you when we're ready type thing. We have an approach where it's, and our phase leads are brilliant at this as well. It's like, if you ever have a question or you're not sure, if you're a bit worried or angry, maybe sometimes, don't wait 2 to 3 weeks to speak to us, because in those 2 to 3 weeks, you're just getting more frustrated. We'll always come and have a nice natural conversation. And 9 times out of 10, it's just a problem in maybe a parent carer's own head where we say, don't worry, don't panic. But we also have lots of good examples at the highest end where players have graduated from our academy into the first team and they're playing a different position, or they're playing a very different position to maybe what they might have played most of their youth career at. So with the experience we have at the higher end, I feel those conversations are easier to have with younger players, because we know factually that if you're going to potentially be selected, even for our 19s or our first team, your first 2 or 3 opportunities might just be out of your position. So if we're not helping players in 2 to 3 positions at a younger age, when it becomes that bottleneck at the top and it's harder and harder to reach that first team setting, if your first team coaches say, well, or if you can say to a coach, well, this player can play this, and this position and maybe be stretched in this position, she's going to have a good opportunity. Whereas if we're saying to the first team staff when they require a player, yeah, well, she really can only play this position, she's good at it, but then they might just go, no, I'm not sure. I think that helps the conversation, is for the parents to understand what it could look like later on, for sure. Yeah.
So is good being multifaceted, basically. You can play in any kind of position and open to that.
And that's the way the game's going. The game is so quick now and it's so fluent that your standard 4-3-3, your standard 4-4-2, football's not really looking like that at the moment. You could be a left back and be asked to then go into a centre midfield area when you have the ball, right? And then when you don't have the ball, come back at being a left back. Or you could be a winger that the team is saying, right, when we've got the ball, we want you to drift inside. The game is changing and evolving, that we have to then develop these younger players so they can really cope with this. Again, the levels at the highest and the top end.
Do you do scholarships, Brighton? How does it go from academy to pro? Is it academy scholarship pro?
It's a bit different to the boys setting and the boys game. So the scholarship system hasn't quite been brought into the women and girls landscape yet. So instead, you would graduate from our youth development phase under 16s into our professional development phase under 19s. And a bit like I said earlier, the players are coming in on what we'd call a hybrid program. So still training 4 or 5 times a week, sometimes with a single game week, sometimes with a double, but they're still in education as well. And they're not being paid necessarily, but then there is the opportunity, if they're really developing at that 18 plus age, that a professional contract could be attained then. Yeah, so it's not quite the same as the boys landscape, but you can see the growth and the trends in the game. I would anticipate over these coming years that the teams for clubs that sit just under that first team, they would probably be professionalised.
What characteristics do you need to be a pro at Brighton? So if you're a girl coming through the academy and then you reach that professional development phase, like you said, what is it that the club is looking for?
The nice thing here at Brighton, and I say this a lot, we have a really nice club-based philosophy where playing an attractive or progressive brand of possession football, skilled, confident technicians who already have an understanding of all 4 corners of the game. So what's nice is that, generally speaking, you'll then have head coaches with the men's and women's first teams that also align to the club's philosophy and then maybe evolve it over time. So what's nice for us is that means we can continue to develop the girls in a similar pattern. So if things change at the higher end of the pathway, it doesn't mean we have to rip up the academy philosophy and the academy rulebook. It will always change and evolve over time, but definitely having skilled and confident technicians who can play progressive football, They're traits that we look for alongside your typical effort, attitude, application on a daily basis as well. But what's nice is, like I say, is with the club-based model, the club-based philosophy, it just means we can develop girls, and I'm hopeful Ian Buckman would say the same with the boys, that fit that philosophy. And it means that if we've got players 13 now, they're always going to have a chance regardless of changes.
What is the biggest distraction you've seen stopping girls going through the system, or what distractions would you advise a young female player to avoid in order to become a pro?
Yeah, like I said, I think it's really hard for them in terms of, social settings are hard. So they're again in this really nice, fortunate, privileged position. And again, they deserve to be here, but they're in a position that potentially 70 or 80% of their peers or those around them of the sort of same age, they're not in. It can be a distraction to sometimes align yourself to people or young people who don't maybe have the same setting as you away from here. So that can be a distraction, and not always a bad distraction. It could be a good, healthy distraction sometimes, a bit like I said earlier, where you don't feel like your whole identity is just a football club. But it can be a distraction. But that would probably be the biggest one. But what I do find is the majority of the young girls that we have in our setting, they're so focused, and they really want to be here. So we don't really have too many issues with that. I think the bit when you go towards the higher end of the pathway is consistency. So are you consistently showing good actions? Are you consistently showing good behaviors? Are you consistently showing effort, attitude, application? And that again can be hard, but that's what we feel is then the characteristic of reaching the top.
So, what have you learned coming to you now? What have you learned in this job that you never thought you would discover when you first came into the position?
Yeah, a really good question. I think one thing is you have a real sense of, you feel like you have such a high sense of accountability for a lot of people, a lot of stakeholders. So whether it's the 70, 80 players we have within the system, or the staff network that we have here, or the parents and carers network, as well as trying to ensure that we're providing good talent, future talent for the first team. I think the thing is it's not, I wouldn't call it overwhelming, but you definitely have a sense of, whoa, when you really take a step back, you're like, you're accountable for a lot here. But then it's also a nice accountability. It's almost like a privilege to have that. So yeah, so that's one big thing I'd say is it's never quite until you're in the role where you understand, okay, this is a really big landscape here. And there's literally hundreds of stakeholders to have to try and help and support, or sometimes give some really hard information to, but it's absolutely all worth it when you're seeing the players either flourish in their youth development settings, or they're training with the first team, or they're making their debut. So the hard work and the amount of hours you have to put in is so worth it when you see the success for those individuals, because it's unrivaled. I'd almost say that for me, having been in the game a while now, that for me is a bigger sense of euphoria than winning a game of football. 100%. That,
You
yeah,
enjoy it?
when you see that and you see them make their debut, and we had one last year. She actually made her debut the season before, but Olivia Johnson came on last year for the first team against Bristol City before Christmas. So she's come on in the game, and I'm there, and then I'm thinking, no. And there's a section of the crowd singing, "She's one of our own." And that for me was just, I was just there like, that's crazy. Like, we've got Olivia, who we've known for however many years, hard work to get her to where she is, hard work from herself, and you've got a section of Brighton fans who are singing Olivia Johnson, "She's one of our own."
That's brilliant.
That it just takes you back a bit there, because you just want it for them so much as well. So it's just, that's
Yeah.
brilliant. Yeah.
Okay, final 4 questions all roll into one. What qualities do you need to be a good academy player, academy coach, academy scout, and academy manager?
Academy player, it's just trying to have a level of consistency that they can apply themselves in everything they do. but we also understand that children are consistently inconsistent. So that's would put me onto the coach. So as long as the children are trying every day and they're coming in, and some of the behaviors we mentioned earlier, as long as they're punctual, as long as they're applying themselves, showing effort, attitude, application, then form could suffer. And that then goes on to the coaches bit. So for coaches and staff, one of the biggest things, just remember your players are going to be consistently inconsistent. And I say it a lot to our age group coaches throughout the pathway. So if you feel they've cracked it with this master performance one week, don't not expect them in 2 weeks' time to like turn around. You're like, what's happening here? But that's the beauty of it.
Academy Scout.
Academy Scout is just have a really good relationship with the technical staff that are also working here, and vice versa. So make sure we feel that we're really aligned to each other, because whilst your scout might want to get the next best talent in, you've also got a coach that wants to persevere with a player that's in the environment. So alignment between what scouts who would like to bring in, but also just aligning with the players we've already got.
An academy manager.
I don't know the answer to that one. You mentioned sleep earlier in the call. Try and get sleep where you can. All right, try and sleep. Yeah, the biggest one for me, actually, I'm learning myself, but it's allow your staff in the environment the opportunity to be responsible and be decision makers and support and guide. But that's what's really nice is, so from a staff perspective, let the phase leads make decisions. You're there to help them if they're not quite sure, but that's big. And really just try and create an environment that everybody wants to be at. So that's players, parents, carers, staff. We really want, when you come to the training ground here, I would just really like everybody who comes here to think, I really can't wait to get to the training ground. And that's parents, players, carers, staff, everybody. I just can't wait to get there. And that's what I say as an academy manager, is it's your responsibility to try and create that experience for everybody.
Brilliant. Is there anything that I haven't covered that you'd like to mention?
I don't know. I think we're good. Yeah, I think it's good. Some good questions in there. It's got me thinking. I haven't had to think about those for a while. So no, it's good. It's good. We've got all of our staff back next week for a development week. So I think I'm going to use some of those questions for our CPD. Yeah,
it's copywritten. No, I'm joking.
That's it. No, it's been really good. Yeah,
that is brilliant. Thank you very much for coming on. Yeah. And thank you guys for joining me on this episode. Hopefully I'll catch you on the next one. Take care. This episode is sponsored by the PV Consultant, the go-to business strategist for salon owners and solo beauty professionals who want to grow smarter, not harder. If you're ready to boost your visibility and start attracting more clients today, download the PV Consultant's free Google cheat sheet at www.thepvconsultant.net/cheat sheet. It's packed with simple, powerful tips to get your business seen by the right people. A big thank you to the PV Consultant for supporting today's episode and helping more businesses shine.